Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Lynn, and I'm here with my co-host, Marissa Roy. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about when you feel like you need to pause your health and fitness and kind of walking you through a little bit, a step by step of why that's actually holding you back from reaching your goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like we both have had like situations that have come up recently where clients have wanted to pause. And I definitely understand the gist behind it, of course. Life happens, stuff comes up, a lot's going on. Um, However, it's really, I guess, the part about it that really I think becomes a problem is that we're perpetuating the issue of doing fitness when things are good and when we have the space and when we have the time and when we have the energy or whatever is the limiting factor in that situation. When in reality, I like to view those situations in life as our greatest area of opportunity to become a better version of ourselves. And that's not to say it's going to be easy or that you need to sacrifice everything to just make your health a priority. But I think there's a lot of like limiting beliefs about what a health and fitness journey needs to look like packed into that too, of like, well, I can't do this because I have too much other stuff going on. Well, it's like, what are we comparing to? Are we comparing health and fitness to all the restrictive, extreme things that we've done in the past? If that were the case, absolutely, you don't have time for it. But health and fitness can really mold and look different in any season or stage of life. And even when you don't have here's what I like to think of is like, even if you don't have the mental capacity, even if you don't have the time, like you are still living in your body every day that's happening. And how you show up in those situations is very directly determined based on how well you're taking care of yourself. And how well you're taking care of yourself is very contingent upon your nutrition and how you move your body.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and we hear this a lot either from current clients who are with us in the program who feel like they need to pause the program, or kind of like a reason for not working with a coach, whether it's us or someone else, or not even a coach, but just like working on their health and fitness. So it's like, oh well, I'll start like once work slows down, or like the kids are in school, or like I don't, whatever big thing has come up. And so we always kind of feel like you were saying, it's like I need to wait for life to slow down a little bit. But like you said, it just doesn't. There's always something. There's like, it's like, oh, after this wedding, or we have a lot of things coming up in the summer, but it's like you're always going to have events. You're always going to have trips. There's never, ever, ever going to be a perfect time. And if you're waiting for that perfect time, again, you're just delaying your goals. And then the other thing that we're doing is we get stuck in this cycle of feeling like I have to be 100% all in with health and fitness. And then if some inconvenience or something comes up, then I have to stop. And so we're getting into this, like, again, we're perpetuating the all or nothing mentality when it comes to health and fitness. And so that's really what we want to fix, is that approach, because with that approach, we're never going to get anywhere. We're never going to reach our goals. And so we need to figure out, like, how can I at least maintain health and fitness right now? And then, yeah, maybe if life is really, really crazy, I have a couple clients right now where they're like in a season of work right now where like they have to take on responsibilities and they do not have a lot of time that they normally have. And so, yeah, we have to figure out like, okay, how do we scale back, and like, what can we do? But I know that we talk about the dial mentality all the time, which we can kind of get into a little bit more, because I feel like we haven't done like an episode on it specifically in a long time. But we want to be kind of going into this mindset of like something rather than nothing. And that is really going to help us a lot when it comes to feeling like, okay, like I can't just like throw everything out the window right now. And we don't want to, like, a lot of people will talk about being on or off the wagon, right, when it comes to health and fitness. And so we want to make sure that we are always on and we're never
yeah.
off. And that might look different in different seasons of life. And that's what we're going to kind of discuss today.
Yeah. And I think too, it's like, okay, let's not sweep it under the rug or skip this part. Like if you're hiring a coach, there's money involved. And so it's like, if you are paying money, I understand the motivation to, I have to pause because I'm not in a position to give my all right now. I hear this a lot, right? I'm not in a position to give my all right now. So, let me pause and come back when I'm in a position to do so. And that is basically the the frame that that's coming from is my perception of what coaching is for is to just accelerate my progress and make the most progress possible, which absolutely that is one role of having a coach. But I think it's really flipping kind of the value proposition on its head where we're thinking, yes, it is faster to achieve results with a coach than without. But sometimes having a coach and working on your health and fitness is not about making as much progress as possible, because that could be a perpetuating of a different problem of you feel like you always have to be progressing, things always have to be better, there's never enough, that that's why you hired them in the first place. And if you're going to pause it when you might need to take a season of maintenance, what if your problem all along has been make a lot of progress, revert, make a lot of progress, revert, make a lot of progress, revert? And that's a big majority of the women that we work with. And so if that's your pattern, then working through a coach through the hard time where actually focusing on maintenance and refining at maintenance, and what that means is like, how do you find your kind of non-negotiables when shit hits the fan? What's your backup plan when you can't do plan A or plan B or plan C? And most people just are not willing or open to doing that sort of work of having those routines down pat. But that's where the game is won. Like if your goal is to say lose weight and keep it off forever, or get fit and stay fit forever, the game doesn't end. And you're going to go through every season of your life in your body. And so my perspective is it is so much more worthwhile to just have the coach through the busiest, messiest time of your life, even if you are paying for it, even if you're putting your money into it and saying, this investment, I want to make it worth it, and really challenge your definition of what worth it means to you. You might only be defining that as seeing a specific amount of results, but really it's learning about how do you handle these things coming up and these stressors, and how do you stay more consistent versus just being off the wagon entirely? How do you discard that all or nothing thinking that Christina mentioned? Like, those are wins. And I think a lot of times we're in such an outcome oriented, results oriented culture with our dieting that we're not able to acknowledge those as wins. But if we're able to do that, we're much better off in the long run.
Yeah, yeah, because it's like it can be kind of crazy to be like, why in the world would I want to hire a coach or work on my health and fitness when I'm like starting a new job or I'm moving across the country or I've whatever stressor you have in your life. But exactly to that point, because when we like hit this like imaginary pause button, right? It's like I get it. You get that sense of relief of like, whew, okay, that was another thing on my plate that I now get to remove and work on something else. So I totally understand that like fresh start feeling of like, let me just start over again on Monday, or let me just start like once I've done XYZ. So I totally get that. But then that that builds the mentality of like, okay, well now I have the skill of pausing. Like when things get tough, I can now pause and I'm really good at that. And so really like exactly what you're saying. It's like working through those messy times allows you to then be like, okay, but when it does slow down, well, now I can really cruise because I already know what to do when things are really hectic. And so there, like when we talk about like, yes, there is no perfect time, but honestly, like the best time is just now, just getting started and doing it now, because you are going to get yourself so much quicker than waiting for that perfect time. And yeah, honestly, when you are the most stressed, like that is really the most helpful to have a person who is by your side who can help get you through those moments. Because life is really complicated. There are a lot of things that pop up here and there, and so it's about having that person who can walk you through kind of like the realities of life and how we can still implement and even just maintain. Because I'm thinking of a couple clients who a lot of them will come on if they're prospective clients and they're like, well, I've got vacation in like a month or like in the middle of the program. Like, is that going to be a problem? Like, and I'm like, no, we love this. I'm like, we love if you have vacation, because especially halfway through the program, that means that we can, everything that we've just practiced, like we get to like put it into like this game time, right? Like, let's see how things work. Like, let's see how we can improve and like what you did. And we'll have clients that come back and they're like, oh my gosh, normally when I go on vacation, I eat everything in sight and I'm so bloated and I feel awful and I don't want to take pictures and I come home and I just feel gross. And they're like, I feel great. I was active, like I felt like I could enjoy myself, but I didn't overindulge. And it's like, this is the best vacation I've ever had. And it's like, yeah, exactly like this. And thinking about like if you had just paused the program, or if you had waited to start the program until afterwards, like they wouldn't have made that progress. And so it's really, really cool. And it's almost like a relief to some clients to be like, oh, I can go out to dinner. I can go on vacation. Then it's like, yes, let's practice. So it is really, really cool to be able to implement those things and move forward. And yeah, maybe you don't make this crazy, insane progress, but now you have those skills for the rest of your life, because it's, you can't, we don't want any of our clients to hermit for 12 weeks and 16 weeks, whatever it is, and just be this perfect client. They're eating out of Tupperware and like they lose all this weight if they can't maintain that, or if that doesn't translate into real life.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think there's like also a time and a season for, kind of making a push, right? And like being more aggressive with things. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like, I think really the majority of people that are going to listen to this podcast, like think about your history. Think about how many times have you started a diet? How many times have you had to get back on track? And if you just know that your history is ridden with those things, then this is something that I would encourage you to play this episode back a few times, like over and over and over again, because it ultimately will really serve you to learn how to navigate this stuff. And I think, when I really sit down with a lot of our clients that we work with and talk with them about this, it's like we're all on the same page here. Like it's like the ones that are pretty much all of our clients are almost all self-aware enough to be like, yep, that's my pattern. I need to fix it. And it's really difficult to invest in coaching through a time where I might not see the best progress all the time, but I know that I'm learning skills for life. And that's what I'm here for in the first place. And so it's like we can really align and get behind that. And one of my favorite quotes is something that goes viral on Instagram like every couple months. It's that Alex Hormozy quote where it's like, don't delay starting, because if you can figure out how to make it work when things are crazy busy, then imagine what it's going to be like when things are not busy, when things are actually easier. You can't predict when that time will be, when things will be better. But at the end of the day, it makes it easier then. And it also, I would be willing to argue for most people, if the argument is, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, I don't have the money, I don't have the whatever, that putting just putting yourself into the situation anyways and moving forward regardless almost always results in benefits with time, with energy, with even finances, because you built confidence in yourself and you really, just put yourself in a position where you had to succeed. And ultimately, I've had multiple accounts over the years of people who have just gotten raises because in their jobs because of what work they've been doing with us. And they've learned how to hold their boundaries, stand up for themselves, be more productive in their work life. And it's resulted in not only their physical and mental confidence, but even sometimes like the ability to make a lucrative living in their job.
Yeah. I love that. And it's like, it's really cool when clients who sign up, when they see that connection, when they like know, like, okay, yeah, if I finally take control of health and fitness, like I am going to level up all areas of my life. And I think that sometimes one of the reasons that the all or nothing mentality kind of like sneaks in is because, again, a lot of times we feel like it's you, like you feel like you're the problem, right? Like I just need to like white knuckle it, or I just need more discipline, or I just need whatever. And it's like uh low carb or Optavia or like whatever kind of diet you're doing, because I hear this a lot with clients. It's like, well, this worked for me, but then the summer happened, and then this and then that happened, and whatever. And so like I just need to get I need I took a little break, but now I need to get back on track. um and so it's like, well, did that approach actually work for you then? If you're not able to take what you learned and you can't apply that into other areas, like, then like what's going to be different the next time you start this again?
Yeah. Or
And
what do
then
you
life
mean
gets,
by worked? Yeah.
yeah, like if it worked, why couldn't you maintain it? And so I mean, again, like I understand, and I was 100% this person before, and I was going back and forth between on and off, on and off, and on and off. So I think the first kind of step with all of this is just kind of accepting that, like, we can't push pause. Like, we cannot push pause on life. Life is
Yeah.
going to continue. And I think it's kind of like once that, like, we have that realization, it's kind of like, okay, so like now what can I do? Right? Because like you can't hit pause in other areas of your life. I mean, you could, I guess you could just like quit your job, right? Like, I'm not doing this. But like if you're a mom, like you know that you cannot push pause as like much as you would love to in that moment. And you just like can't do that. So it's like, okay, like I've accepted this. So like now what? Like what are the steps that I have to take to kind of like move me forward and create these results?
Mm. Yeah. I love that what you said there. You can't put pause on your life. So what are you going to do? Yeah, because ultimately I think it's the fallacy that, and I think like we do it to ourselves in a way in the fitness industry, and there's only so much of it that we can help with, like marketing and stuff. And if you want to hear about that, just listen to the episodes where we said we spilled the tea. But like we do it to ourselves kind of when we call it a program, right? Or when the client comes in with the perception that this program costs this dollar amount, and so in order to get as much out of it as possible, I must, you know, be in for this many weeks for this long, right? So we kind of do it to ourselves in a way with that, but at the same time it's like it creates a fallacy that that is something that can be paused because it's a program versus our lifestyle. When really all coaching is really doing is helping you change your lifestyle through the ups and downs. And so semantics play a really big role, like just the meaning that people assign behind words. And that's something that's, I mean, I've brought it up like 3 times in the past like 3 episodes. So like it's obviously been grinding my gears, this whole perception of like what is a program versus
Mhm.
coaching. But but yeah, so I think just removing the if you're working with a coach, you're considering working with a coach, um, removing the idea that it is a program, because it is really, that's just the name of a container for facilitation of your lifestyle changes. And that happens in the messy parts, and that's what we call the dirty work. So um just keep that in mind.
Yeah. So having a coach is very, very helpful in these times because they can help you navigate and come up with a solution that is actually realistic for you. And so, again, we've used the dial analogy quite a bit, and we kind of talk about health and fitness on a scale of like 0 to 10 or like 1 to 10, wherever you want to do. And so, when things are easy, we can turn the dial up and we can push a little harder and we can grind, right? And because it's like, well, I don't have anything else to do, so like, let's go for it.
Yeah.
Um, or like, okay, what usually happens is we go from a 10 to a 0. We go from like, oh shit, like something came up, I'm going on vacation or I have to move or whatever. And we go from a 10 and we crank it down to a 0 and we're doing nothing. We're not thinking about fitness. We're not doing anything with health. Like, we're just not doing anything. And so the idea is like, okay, like, how do I turn it down and figure it out where it's like, I'm still doing something,
Yeah.
but it's just like, and again, it's like, what is realistic for your current situation? Like, again, I'm thinking about my client who's having to like get up and like work, and she's working till like 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, right? Like, that is really difficult. Like, that's
Yeah.
really, really, really difficult. And so it might be realistic, like, she's going to the gym like 3-ish times a week, and she's doing a couple cardio sessions, and she's doing really good with food. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, we really don't have time to go to the gym right now. and that's okay. So like let's focus on steps. Like when you're able to, like let's get some steps in on like your meetings, like like just where can we find that time to implement a little bit of something, so it's not that zero, but maybe right now we just have to do like sit at a 2. And
Yeah.
like I think that's really frustrating sometimes, because you're like, but I just was at a 10. I was just doing all of this stuff. And so sitting at a 2 can be very hard mentally, because it's like this isn't moving me forward. This isn't doing anything. And I have another client example that I'm thinking about too, is she, and I've talked about her before, she went from like the bodybuilder mentality of like I've got to go to the gym for 2 hours every single day, destroy my legs, like, and like I've eating out of Tupperware and I'm eating off a meal plan. And if I'm not doing that, it doesn't matter. And we were like, hey, like, even if you can't finish your entire workout, just start. Just do 10, 15 minutes. And if your son wakes up, he wakes up. But you got in 10 to 15 minutes. And she was like, this is so stupid. This is so stupid. This is such a waste of time. And it really took her a little while to like get into, and then she's like, oh my God, I'm seeing progress. And then
Yeah.
she kept up. And then she's like, oh my God, I'm making progress and I'm feeling good. And like, and she's like, I cannot believe these little like mini sessions throughout the week. And she's like, I might have only completed one full workout. I mean, I tried like 3 times, but she's like, I can't believe I'm actually making progress out of this. And so she
Yeah.
kind of learned that, again, something is better than nothing. It's better than not doing anything. And so trying to figure out what that looks like. And maybe for my client who's working like until 10 or 11 o'clock, maybe she doesn't have time for fitness, but she's able to get steps in during meetings. Or on the weekend, she's really able to dial in nutrition. So she's set up for success during the week. Like figuring out like what, almost kind of like what is the maintenance mode that you need to be in right now, and kind of figuring out, okay, like let's just
Yeah.
cruise here for a couple months. And then again, like once it slows down a little bit, we can pick things back up again.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, one way that I was just thinking about this was like, I feel like you can make, like, if we were thinking about the volume dial 0 to 10, I feel like it's probably reasonable to assume that you can make progress anywhere from like a 6 to a 10, right? And then maybe maintaining some level of your progress would be 0 to 5. Um, so with that being said, it's like I think it's also really important to orient yourself around the fact that okay, you've gone from 0 to 10 to 0 to 10 to 0 to 10, where most people starting out a fitness journey who work with either us at PCC or you, Christina, is they will first learn how to live at a 5 before going up in direction. That's, I think, the approach that we both take is like, let's find 5, like 4 or 5. And then I think it's really just finding out like, okay, what does a 6 feel like? Like, let's try that. What does a 6 feel like? And figuring out like what intensity you can reasonably sustain in any season of your life, and kind of taking baby steps up from there versus being like, okay, we learned 5, like let's jump to 10 now, right? Because that also doesn't teach us anything. Because then when shit hits the fan and we're at an 8 because we've been crushing it, we can dial back to a 6. And maybe we can still make progress through that crazy time, but we're able to like know what every level kind of feels like and be able to go from there. And the beauty of this system per se is that the more you practice these in between levels, the more your skill set and base really builds to where like what used to feel like an 8 habits wise, practices wise, routines wise, can sometimes over time just start to feel like a 6. Because like I'll use personal example, I've been doing this for, decade at least. And that, the way that I take care of myself, get my workouts in now compared to when I started, like might have been a 10 effort back then with what I do, how I meal prep, how I eat, how I track macros, how I train, and make that a priority. But now the level of effort that I would say that I'm putting out now is like a 5. Like I'm just kind of maintaining. It's not really taking much effort or time on my part. 5, maybe 5.5, 6. But I'm doing all the same things. It just got easier for me because I got more used to it and stronger and more resilient to obstacles. So I think it's like knowing what those in betweens are like, and also understanding the fact that the more you do it, the more skilled you get, and your lower numbers are actually higher skill, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. I love that. And then the other thing that I was thinking about is like going back to like, okay, but what if I am at a one or a two? And like that can feel really hard if you're used to operating at a higher level. But there's such a big difference between turning things completely off and sitting at that one or two that is still going to really move us forward. So there is a big difference. And there was something else that you had brought up that I was thinking about, and it is gone. So hopefully it comes back. I mean, I pregnancy brain is at an all-time high right now. But man, there was something. Maybe just kind of thinking about how like there are also like there it is. So like there you can have a like your 100% or like your dial may look different and also day to day. Like, I think that's
Yeah.
really important to think of too, is like maybe Wednesdays is like a really heavy meeting day. And like, it is not realistic for me to get out like and work out, or it's not realistic for me to like cook my meals. So like whatever it may be, just recognizing like some days be a little bit better. Some days may be a little bit lower. And like your 100% effort is going to change day to day too. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to set everything at a four and just cruise. I mean, maybe that's how it is operating, but just knowing that it
Yeah.
can kind of fluctuate day to day. And then the other thing I was going to say is like also recognizing that your dial may look different in different areas. So as far as like nutrition, training or like movement, exercise, like your wellness, like your health, and um, even like your social life, right? Like that, like
Yeah.
different areas you might need to turn up and down to kind of figure out because, and we've talked about this with prep, it's like when your health and fitness and everything like that is cranked up to a 10, you have to turn down other areas of your life. It is probably not realistic for you to also be at a 10 with your social life and like and work and like everything else. It's like you're going to have to like there's those that give and take. And so kind of figuring out like how to change things up. And again, this is the beauty of having a coach is they can kind of like walk you through this, feel it's realistic. And what's really important too is like we talk about with our clients is like your non-negotiables or like what you feel like you can do. It is okay if they change. Like if you try something out and it's not working, okay, now we just figured out something that didn't work and like let's go back to the drawing board because I think a lot of times like it's like, oh, it's not working, like whatever, I'm just going to give up. So just kind of knowing it's okay. And like if you do quote unquote fail, like we talked about, there are no failures, only lessons learned, right? But it's like,
Yeah.
what did I learn from this? How can I apply this and move forward and figure out what's going to work?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things about people who struggle with that pausing, I need to stop. I need to is we're afraid of failing. Just
Yeah.
afraid of failing. Right. And so the what you just said, like fail forward, learn from those experiences, adopting that mindset about this isn't about being successful all the time. This is about failing. And if you can embrace failure, then it makes sense to keep going rather than pause through these situations because you are going to learn from every slip up failure when things hit the fan and you're too busy like okay, let's work with that. It's hard to look at ourselves in the mirror during those times because we want to hold ourselves to a higher standard, but at the end of the day, like it's really really important that we work through those failures as well. And so I think a lot of the people that struggle with this pausing mentality is perfectionists, all or nothing thinkers, people that really are not okay with the idea of not being 100% and not okay with the possibility of failure. But as soon as you can learn to embrace that, that's when you're ultimately going to be successful in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. And just kind of embracing like, okay, I'm going to shift from that all or nothing to like
Yeah.
something is better than nothing. And it kind of sounds like it's so hard, right? Like I feel like we come from like hustle culture and like that's perpetuated of like we need to grind and we need to be ultra successful and like it's hard to be like, well, I don't want to give myself a pat on the back because I did something, right?
Yeah.
Like because I parked further away and like got a few extra
Yeah.
10 steps. Like that doesn't feel like something to be celebrated. But again, if we zoom out and look at it in the big context of like, well, I used to shut down and do absolutely nothing. If I'm still operating at like a 1 or a 2, and like I'm still being kind of conscious of some things, and I didn't gain 5 to 10 pounds because I'm off the wagon and I just maintained during the stressful time, like that absolutely is something to be celebrated.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all of the underlying belief like what I'm doing is not enough. It's not good
Hmm.
enough. It's not
Right.
successful enough. But if you can give yourself credit for the little things, then the little things will add up to whatever you do think is enough, even
Yeah.
though the little things were enough to begin with. But that's just a practice that you got to get used to celebrating those small wins.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like it's really, really hard to, because again, I get it. I get it. It's like when we do the 75 hard, when we do the 8 week challenge or whatever it is, we see progress during those times because we are operating at a higher level. But then if we fall off and we lose that, and we're on it like 0 to 10, 0 to 10, 0 to 10, we're just probably going to maintain, or like you're just going to be stuck at this point where you're just like not really making progress. But if you have this something is better than nothing mentality, it might be a little bit slower progress than you would like, but over time, that's really going to add up. And that's like it's so hard to zoom out and look big picture and think about how is this going to affect me in the long term, because again, it's like if I want to lose 5 to 10 pounds, like I want to do it now, I want to do it fast, and like I want to see it. But it's kind of like, well, would you rather lose 5 to 10 pounds and gain it back, or would you like in like 8 weeks if you're doing this 8 week challenge, or would you rather lose like 20 pounds in like 8 months but be able to keep it off, and now you know how to operate when things get stressful, because it's life and that is going to happen. It's like that is going to set you up so much further for success in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome, guys. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and you no longer want to push that pause button. But hopefully you guys are following the podcast and following us on Instagram. You can find me at Christy Lynn Fit. Marissa is at Marissa Roy Fitness. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you back next week.